Hi again, Mark here from TalkingBass.net. This week I'm going to be giving you a quick lesson on a few cool muting techniques that you can use on bass to give you that dead note sound that you might have heard on some old soul tracks, reggae tunes, and you can even use it to emulate an upright bass. If you've not been over to TalkingBass.net, then get yourself over there. There's absolutely loads of lessons organised on the lesson map, so you can find the topics that you need. And you can also download the lesson material from the buttons below each video. If you subscribe completely for free, you'll gain access to loads of other features like the forum, the courses, the library, and the practice room, where you can find a whole bunch of practice resources. So check it out. So when I'm talking about muted notes in this lesson, I'm talking about this kind of sound. And I'm going to be showing you three different techniques for doing it. The first is what we call palm muting, and you'll see loads of rock guitarists doing this to get that real chug sound with the distortion. We're going to be using it for a little bit of a different application, but the idea is the same. So to do this, we're going to pick with the thumb. Okay, so if you just fret a C there, third fret of the A string, and then just pluck it with the thumb. Okay, so there it is, the thumb. Now to palm mute, what we're going to do is take the heel of the hand, that part of the hand there, and we're going to press it down quite firmly down there, just in front of the bridge there. So get your hand down there, and then, while keeping that down there, pluck with the thumb, and here presto, you get that muted sound. Okay, so that's just the thumb on its own. Bring the heel of the palm down. Okay, so that's the basic technique there. So just try practicing on that single note. So if you take that C, just get used to playing it there with the thumb, then move on to the other strings. So we can try a G there, third fret of the E string, or you could try an F up there on the D string, or a B flat on the G string. So I've just tried the third fret on each one, so move across. And you'll notice when you do this, you've got to move the hand across a little bit. You can't really keep it in one position. You have to move it slightly. I mean, you can pretty much keep it there just for the A and the E string, but when you move up, you have to move just a slight bit, just so that you can keep consistency with where you're catching it with the heel. And you can really push down there, especially on this big fat E string down here. When you get up onto the G string, you'll have to probably lighten up a bit because the string's a lot thinner, so you can deaden it a bit too much. So to keep a little bit more body to the note, you've got to ease up slightly. So down there on the E string, you can really press down because there's so much more, string there. But up on the G string, just lighten up a bit, but just practice going between them, just moving around until you find the way that's right for you. This technique works great for getting that old retro vibe, so you can imitate people like James Jamerson. The old precision basses had little rubber mutes under that big metal plate that you might have seen around the bridge area. So if you listen to some of those old Motown recordings by people like Marvin Gaye or the Supremes, you'll hear that dead kind of sound, that. And it also helps if you've got flat wound strings on a P bass, but you'll get the same kind of sound on any bass if you get that technique right. You'll also hear that technique sometimes on reggae tunes. You get that. And you can also use it to get to kind of imitate an upright sound, as you're moving through and walking bass lines. And obviously, you're never going to get a proper upright sound on an electric like this, but it can help to imitate that kind of heavy attack and that quick decay that you get. So in a mix of standard playing jazz standards or something like that, it can sound kind of good doing that. Okay. One thing that I would definitely suggest is paying close attention to your EQ. You can sometimes lose a little bit of bass response when you use this technique, and your overall volume usually comes down a bit. So you might need to mess around with your volume and your tone controls on your bass or on your amp to compensate for the loss. So here's a quick bass riff that you can use for trying out that technique, and it's pretty much based on Bob Marley's Stir It Up. Okay? So the bass line sounds like this. So I'll just take you through that bass line, and then I'll get a little bit more into the technique that I'm using as we go through. So it starts off on an A, 5th fret of the E string, then we've got C sharp, 4th fret of the A string, D, 5th fret of the A string, and then back to the C sharp. So we've got a little rhythm on that, so we've got so A, C sharp, D, C sharp. So that's the first part. Then we move to D. So this is going to be a D major arpeggio, the 1st, 3rd and 5th of that. That'll probably help if you know your arpeggios. It's a little bit quicker than showing you the frets, but I'll go through those anyway. So we've got D, we've got the 5th fret of the A string, F sharp, 4th fret of the D string, and A, 7th fret of the D string. So, okay, D, F sharp, A. Then we move up to an E major arpeggio, so E, G sharp, B. So that's E, 7th fret of the A string, G sharp, 6th fret of the D string, and B, 9th fret of the D string, okay? So all together. So A, C sharp, D sharp, C sharp, D, F sharp, A, E, G sharp, B. Now, for the technique on this hand, so I'm using the palm muting all the way through, so I've got the heel down there, but I actually use 2 fingers for this. I use the thumb and the 1st finger, and this is an important tip to learn, or technique to learn, because if you just use your thumb, you know, you can use it on its own, it's fine, but if you want a little bit more fluidity to that, so you don't want it to be as tense, you know, that ding, 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 then you can start using the 1st finger as well. So you can see there I've got the thumb, 1st finger, thumb, 1st finger. So if you just practice doing that round and round, and of course you've got to keep that heel down there, so start slow, and just on an A there. So that's a lot faster than you can go, you know, with your thumb there. So when I play that riff, that, the little ghost note, well, the little C sharp moving into the D, that little skip, it doesn't sound as, you know, tense. It's a little easier to play it because I'm just going between the 2 fingers. Okay, so like I say, just makes it a little bit more fluid. So just try playing any kind of bass line using that palm muting technique, and just as a little exercise, just for going between the thumb and the 1st finger, we can just try going up a major scale. So just try, for instance, a G major scale, okay? So G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, okay? And try going thumb, 1st finger, thumb, 1st finger, while palm muting. Okay, and that's good for just getting a little bit of, well, the technique working a little bit quicker. Okay, so that way, if you can play through stuff like that, you probably won't have much of a problem with playing, you know, that kind of bass line. So that's one way of getting that muted sound, but we can also get that sound by using the fingers on the fretting hand as well. So, you know, not doing any palm muting or anything like that, nothing with this hand, just with the fretting hand. Now to do this, we use these remaining fingers. We fret with that 1st finger, so let's take a C there, 3rd fret of the A string, and then what we can do is bring these fingers down and just rest them lightly on the string, so we get that muted sound like that. Okay, so there it is, properly fretted. Okay, so it's the same kind of technique. It does sound slightly different because we're getting more attack with the fingers down here, but you know, you can. Okay, so we'll just go through that technique a little bit more. So if you take a C there, 3rd fret of the A string, and then if you just fret it, these fingers are up here like this, then just bring them down slowly, and you'll hear them as they, you know, you've got to come down very gently, bit by bit, and the more that you press, obviously the more muted it'll become, until it just becomes a ghost note in the end. But if you just release it slightly, this is very subtle. Okay, so you get that sound there. once you've nailed this technique, you can start to move the hand around a little bit more, like this. But of course, it is a little bit limiting because we are playing one-fingered most of the time. You know, we're playing with that single index finger and muting with the remaining fingers. So it is a little bit limited in terms of the fingerings. You know, you're not really going to be playing Chopin on bass like this. But if you watch anybody like Rocco Prestia from Tower of Power, who uses this all the time, or Danny Moe Morris from Berklee College of Music, you'll see how they can whiz around the neck all over the place. You know, they play arpeggios and things like that. So it is doable. So you just have to put a bit of practice in, obviously. So, you know, it is a really good technique. So here's a little Motown style groove that you can play using this technique. So here it is first. So really simple groove, and we start on a C again, so 3rd fret of the A string, then move down to the G, 3rd fret of the E string, so, and then back to the C, and then we come back down to the G, but this time, so play a couple of G's down there, then move to the A, 5th fret of the E string, and then back to the G again, so. Okay. We could also try playing the reggae line that we tried with the palm muting earlier on. So that would sound like this. And just be careful when you play through it like this, because it's not too bad with the A, the C sharp and the D, but when you get up onto the D string, just as with the palm muting, when you have to ease off a little bit as you get up to the G, you just got to be a bit careful that you don't mute it too much, because it's easy to go into ghost note territory with those thinner strings. So, like even there, I'm muting a little bit too much. Okay. So that's 2 different ways of getting that same muted sound, just using 2 separate different techniques. And neither way is better. You just decide on which one works for you and which one works with whatever bass line you're playing. Now, there is another way of doing this. And as you might have noticed, there's a piece of kitchen sponge stuck under my strings, okay? So this is the other way that you can do it. And I don't just necessarily mean using kitchen sponge. There's loads of different things. You can use foam, you can use felt, all kinds of stuff. And this is basically imitating those little rubber mutes that you get on the old precision basses. So you just get something like this, like foam, and just wedge it in there. I just cut this up just before filming this lesson, and yeah, I mean, it does look a little bit too DIY, I guess, but it's not particularly glamorous, but it does get a little bit of a it does get that sound. So if I play with that, you can hear there it's muted. It's not quite as muted as I was with the hands, and obviously when you're using the hands to get the muting, you can be a little more controlled with it. You can decide, oh, I need a little bit more, need a little bit less. With foam, you kind of stuck with it. You kind of have to adjust it if you want to mute any more. But this one, the kitchen sponge that I've used, it's not a particularly heavy mute. You can use some real heavy stuff and get a real dead sound. But this one's a little bit more subtle. Okay, so it's not really heavy, which might help sometimes. If you're in a band situation and using the palm muting isn't really cutting through, and you want that sound, but you want it a little bit more subtle. This can be a good solution to that problem. So. And one thing that this does do is it kind of frees you up. So if you wanted to play something a little bit faster, like particularly if you're going to be playing like fast walking bass lines, that kind of thing, you don't really want to be concentrating on, oh, my technique, like trying to keep the palm muting working. That can be, you start thinking all about your hands rather than actually thinking about what you're doing, And so this can be a solution to that problem, So if you were going to be playing a lot of notes and you wanted to use that muting on all of them, then yeah, this might be a better solution. But, you know, for the rest of it, just, you know, palm mute in there, a little bit more controlled. That's 3 different ways. You just pick which one that you want. Now, if you do like using this kind of foam method for getting the dead notes, it's worth mentioning that I think there is a product out that you can use for doing this, and I think it's called the Bass Mute, and it looks a little bit like a little bridge or something, like a little metal device, and that can just go there, just fits under, just in front of your bridge. It's got a lever on it, and it's got the little rubber mutes, and then when you pull the lever, they come up to touch the strings, you know, mutes the notes, and then you can press the lever down and it comes off. So that's, you know, saves having to bung this kind of stuff in and then pull it out again. So yeah, that's the Bass Mute. So if you you know, if you want to get into this stuff, then it's worth checking that out. Okay, so that's it for palm muting. So please like this video if it's helped you, and subscribe to the YouTube channel for weekly updates. Also visit TalkingBass.net for loads more lessons, articles and practice resources, and subscribe to gain access to all those exclusive extras. Okay, see you later.